Okay, I'm David Krapf, editor-in-chief of WorkBoat and WorkBoat.com. And today we have Matthew Rigdon, the executive vice president and chief operating officer of Jackson Offshore Operators in Houston, where Matt is coming from today. I'm up in Breckenridge, Colorado, away from my New Orleans office. Jackson right now, I will ask Matt in a minute how many are operating, but the last I checked, they had 5 PSVs and they had 2 cruise suppliers. So the first question, Matt, the offshore community, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico, and you entered this year fairly confident that a drilling recovery was in the making, only to be, there's many terms for it, like sucker punched early on by this demand-sapping coronavirus pandemic. And now they have, as you know, this global oil price feud. The oil prices, were crushed by a combination of that and the oil war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. I think last I checked, oil has rebounded, as you know, yesterday with the talk they're going to do something, and then now it's at, the last I checked, is at 26.58 a barrel, so it's up 5% today. I think you said about 5 weeks ago, when you talked to one of my correspondents in Houston, was about that you said you had a pretty good handle on 2020 activity before all this broke out.
Yep.
And now you just don't know. So what do you say now? 5 weeks later, I guess.
I really don't know yet. I don't think anybody knows yet. Certainly the optimism I had 5 weeks ago has evaporated. I felt like the latter half of this year would be pretty good, and certainly 2021, I was frankly very optimistic that we were going to see a real recovery in deep water drilling. And at this point, I just don't know. Certainly, we're going to have to wait and see. The indications we're getting from our clients is they're not overreacting at this point. They're taking somewhat of a wait and see stance on this to see how prolonged this will be, but indications are that they are making plans to reduce activity in the near term, and certainly in the mid to long term, based on how this plays out over the next several months.
What are you seeing from? I think your PSVs are under long-term charter. Is that correct? Most of them.
That's correct. The 5 PSVs that we own, 4 on term contract through 2023. We've got 1 contract that expires in November of next year, 2021. And frankly, referring back to the 5-week ago period that you talked about, I felt very confident about where we were in terms of either extending the contract on the vessel that expires in 2021 or, finding another opportunity for it.
Right.
Certainly, I have some concerns about where we will be as an industry and where Jackson will be in terms of being able to extend or renew that contract in November of next year. Again, I think we're just too early in this to understand how this is all going to play out and what the world's going to look like even 6 months from now. It's hard to know what it's going to be like, 18 months from now. But that's what wasn't a concern 5 weeks ago is now certainly a concern with regard to having 1 vessel that will have a contract coming up or expiring in November of next year.
I guess that gets back to what you said a few weeks ago. Was that exactly what you said? You don't have many data points yet to tell what's going to happen, but obviously you're certainly preparing for what's going to be a slowdown. So do you still see demand being further eroding? Do you have any idea of how much demand is going to be, as you call it, demand destruction, and for how long? Do you have any grasp on that yet, do you think?
No, not at all. Early indications are, we are seeing some things happen with regard to, we had a client who shut down production at a facility. Now, they claim that they had an opportunity based on where they were in the well program to stop production at that facility at the moment, and which was at the time, at least initially, quite shocking. It makes a little bit more sense now, and we do more understand, the rationale for taking that action at the time. Certainly the forecast for an increase in the deepwater rig count that I was anticipating is, I think, out the window for sure. And in fact, obviously my gut tells me we're going to see a reduction in number of drilling rigs as contracts expire. Those won't be extended. Certainly new contracts won't be put in place, at least in the midterm. So yeah, we're going to see some softness. We're going to see a decline in demand for sure.
Now, Alan Brooks, I think you know Alan Brooks.
Sure.
He wrote a column for us. You might have read it, about the offshore sector gets punched in the mouth. And that was, I think he wrote that March 25th. So he says that there's no sugarcoating the outcome. Rigs and boats will go idle. Seamen and drillers will lose their jobs. Contracts will be terminated or adjusted. So he said some companies are at risk of a total collapse. But then he said, if COVID-19 is controlled fairly quickly, global economic activity will rebound and boost oil demand the second half of 2020. And he said also, of course, increased oil use will help moderate the Russia-Saudi Arabia battle. What do you think about that little prediction of the second half of 2020 by Alan?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I think, certainly I'm not an analyst. I follow it closely, but I tend to rely on guys smarter than me, such as Alan, about where they think things are headed. I would say this, I can't agree nor disagree at this point. I just don't think, I don't know enough. I don't think any of us really do.
No, I guess talking about your cruise, you had said that as far as you were concerned about the limited supply of coronavirus tests that's out there, which you said at the time, a few weeks ago, you said that is creating an especially untenable situation, ensuring that vessels are adequately crewed. You were concerned that on coronavirus, if you're exposed to it, you need to be quarantined for 14 days. So if a guy shows up in a boat and has a cough, what do? Do you quarantine him on the boat for 14 days? I mean, so basically, what are you doing to protect your crews during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, we've taken all the measures that have been mandated by CDC. Certainly a couple of our clients have been very proactive and were frankly pretty far ahead of the curve on trying to get ahead of this with regard to personnel going offshore, as well as marine crews working on vessels. We did a couple of things. First, we thought it would be wise to extend our crew rotations. Our crews typically work 28 days on, 14 days off. In order to minimize the frequency of crew changes, we extended crew rotations from 28 and 14 to 42 and 21. We obviously put in all the screening protocols that are required. We've actually hired a third-party group that's conducting all of the screenings of our crews when they arrive to the office for crew change. The crews are required to, once they show up at the office, and we screen them and we take their temperatures and go through the list of questions. Once they depart the office, they're to go straight to the vessel, which is a change because typically guys would like to stop at Walmart, pick up whatever they might need. And so they're having to change, they're thinking about when they're arriving and what to be prepared for. Certainly we're screening now all personnel getting on board the vessel, whether it's vendors or client personnel or port facility personnel. Our clients are making pretty good efforts in terms of reducing the amount of interaction by reducing physical paperwork, trying to get everything to be electronic. Vessel manifests now being done via email. So those are the types of things that we're doing that thus far have been, we've been lucky. We've not had a case, touch wood. We've heard of some instances of some vessels having cases. And as you say, if you've got a guy that shows up with a cough and a fever or he's been on the boat, then yeah, you've got to isolate him, get him tested, evaluate the rest of the crew, potentially get them tested. So we've worked through protocols and how we would handle that. And certainly it doesn't look pretty if we ever got to that point, but I feel like we're pretty well prepared to deal with it in the unfortunate event that it were to happen.
Yeah, so far, because obviously you have the long-term charters for your boats. So that's been the biggest effect on business, has just been the protocols and changing the way of thinking about when you do crew changes and things. But other than that, you haven't seen any big impacts on the bottom line as of yet.
No, not as of yet. No.
Okay. All right, Matthew. I think that's about 8 minutes. So I want to thank you again, Matthew Rigdon of Jackson Offshore Operators, and good luck and stay healthy during this crisis.
Yeah, everybody that's watching this, stay healthy. Please follow the social distancing protocols. The only way we're going to get past this thing is if we really take this seriously and stay inside, stay away from each other, work from home, all those things.
Okay, thanks, Matthew.